There are no dog days in this part of the world, the dog days of summer. I'm very glad to be here. My friends in Ohio are suffering immensely. Today's reading speaks about the bread of life. I want to go through the three readings to point out some of the things that I think are rather fascinating. Then talk about the problem, or at least some aspects of the problem of actually receiving the bread of life, and then perhaps how better to approach that reception. So first, the readings. The one from the book of Exodus, there are actually two stories, one in the book of Numbers and this one in the book of Exodus, that tells about the quail coming down and so on. It says here, the whole Israelite community grumbled against Moses and Aaron. They grumbled. They were in the desert for already at least a month. And if you know anything about the desert in the Sinai area, that's pretty difficult going. In fact, I think I'd be with the Israelites and I would be grumbling too. And they wanted to go back to what they had. When everything gets insecure, when everything gets difficult, you think about the past, and sometimes you even romanticize the past, and you want to go back to it, those great old days. Well, the old days weren't so great, actually, but we picture them often after we've racked up a number of decades in our own lives. And as it turns out here, it says they not only wanted to go back, and you'll see there's a gap in the reading. It's chapter 16, verses 2 to 4, and then 12 to 15. So we jump 8 verses here. And what are we jumping? We're jumping a kind of dialogue between Moses and God. You know, what am I going to do with these people? Man, you have asked me to take on a job I don't like. I don't like these people, frankly. I don't think a pastor ever has that feeling. But this is what Moses is saying to him. And then the text picks up again. Then the Lord said to Moses, I will rain down bread from heaven, gather their daily portions. Don't hoard. Don't be a pig. Take your daily portions. Not more than that, except on the Sabbath. The eve of the Sabbath, they were able to take 2 helpings in order to keep the Sabbath free. But the notion of daily bread, we pick it up in the Our Father as well, is to trust in the Lord. Put your trust in the Lord. Now, I'm an impatient person. I'm German. And I like to have things organized. And I like to get them done. And trust never came easily to me in various ways. How many of you remember being warned about Ouija boards, fortune tellers? Huh? How many of you actually cheated? No. Oh, you did. And you've been unhappy ever since. Now, why does the church oppose Ouija boards and so on? Because people are trying to get an angle so that they know the future, or they know something. Knowledge is going to save them. Capacity to predict and own is going to save them. And the tradition says, no, trust in the Lord. Doesn't mean planning shouldn't take place, but it does mean trust is primary. And then quail were sent. You know, there's a whole discussion among the scholars about how would these quail come south, apparently, from Europe, fly over the Mediterranean, and as one author said, they get just exhausted and they plop down on the ground and they're easy game. I don't know. The other one was, what is this manna in the desert? The word manna, interestingly enough, means what is it? So when it says here, what is it? They're actually naming it, and there's all kinds of speculation. That's not that important as to what this could be and how it could happen. But nonetheless, God provides. But the people grumble. We'll come back to grumbling in a minute. It's a widespread sport. The letter to the Ephesians, we're jumping up next level here. It says, brothers and sisters, you must no longer live as the Gentiles in the futility of their minds. So right away you have a dialectic, a tension in the reading. One talks about the mind, and the other is how you live. And it's suggesting that they ought to be in sync together. And it goes on here and it says, but now that you've learned Christ. It's a very interesting translation, and I think a good one. It didn't say, now that you've learned about Christ. The text says, now that you've learned Christ. What does that mean? Well, it goes on to say a few more things. It says, you were taught in him. Again, a statement, not about him. You actually learn by dwelling in him. Those of you who have experienced a profound love with someone else knows that there's something there that is not just about, it's within. It's a sensibility. It's a presence. As truth is in Jesus, in another part of John's gospel, he says, I am the truth. You should put away the old self and put on the new self. This is a reference to baptism, where you take off the old clothes, you put on the new clothes. And the notion is that this is a transformation, but we all know that transformation takes a long time. Step forward, there might be one back, 2 steps forward, 1 back. You thought you had that conquered, and all of a sudden there it is looking at you in the mirror. It doesn't always work quickly. It takes a long time. It's a process. Then the gospel. Last Sunday, you had the multiplication of the loaves and the fish. Here you have, when the crowd saw that neither Jesus nor his disciples were there, they themselves got into boats. What happened in between? Jesus appeared to the disciples on the sea, walking on the water. That's enough to spark your imagination about who is this guy walking on the water. And they come to find him out. They go to the other side. They capture him. And then when they get over there, the people, this is the crowd. The crowd, that's a code word in the Gospel of John. The crowd are the people that don't really believe. Crowds. And they get over there, and the first thing they say, well, when did you get here? Which is really a dumb question. When did you get here? 7:30. Okay, where are we going to go with that? And he says, no, when did you get here? And then his answer, look at his answer. This is John, typically the guy, I love this. When did you get here? Jesus answered and said, amen, men, I say to you, you are looking for me not because you saw. It doesn't answer the question. He's trying to take the game to another level. That's what he wants to do. Take it to another level. This is typical. Do not work for the food that perishes, and so on. It says, for on him the Father, God has set his seal. Who? The Son of Man. Set his seal. What does that mean? 2 things it can mean in Scripture, and they're both important. When the Father sets his seal on the Son, there's also the statement, don't you realize that when you see me, you see the Father? I am the authentic representation of the Father. The Father and I are one. Second one of seal is, this is the one whom I've consecrated. This is the one whom I have dedicated to show you what it is to live that Christian life. Then there's a very interesting shift here. The people say, what can we do to accomplish the works, plural, of God? Jesus answers, another one of these things where it seems like a non sequitur. Jesus answers and said to them, this is singular, the work of God. They want to know, what activities can we do? Okay? Jesus says, no, this is the work of God. What is the work of God? The work of God is God so loved the world that he sent his only Son. The work of God is this incarnation, this embodiment. It goes on and says, what sign can you do? They're asking for signs. Jesus is not against signs, but he's against people that get stuck with the sign and don't go through the sign to see the deeper reality. And then it goes on and it ends up, and it's a beautiful thing, I'm the bread from heaven, I came down, and so on and so forth. Even the Pharisees called the Torah the bread of God, the nourishment of God, the law, the word is there. Give us this bread always, and answers them Jesus, I am the bread. And I could picture the people, I'd be with the people, say, well, no, please, I'm interested in some bread. It's interesting, in our culture, we call money bread. You got any bread? First thing you don't think of is a loaf. So those are the readings, and I think they're rather fascinating. What can we draw from them? First, something about grumbling. Somewhere in one of the books of C.S. Lewis, I don't remember which one, I was thinking about this morning, thinking about it, grumbling to myself. I couldn't find it. But he says it's important to distinguish between a grumble and a grumbler. A grumble is something you do on occasion. A grumbler is something you are. You can recover from grumbling, but if you become a grumbler, you're dead in the water. Whiner, complainer, How are you? Oh, my back, my shoulder, my head, I'm losing my hair. You know, no, how are you? Oh, terrible. I can't believe I didn't sleep well last night. I'm not asking anymore. So, grumbling is one way that we don't see through signs of the presence and power of God. What are other ways? Well, one way that I deal with all the time and try to fight and think through is busyness. Busyness. So busy. My oldest sister, raising 7 children, says, I know what to live the gospel is, you don't. My sisters are always very kind. I have 3 of them. One time I ignored what was a ruptured appendix. This was in 1996. Actually ruptured for almost 24 hours, and the pain got so bad that I finally said, I think I should go to the hospital. And all 3 of my sisters, who are nurses, in unison said, typical male, out of touch with your body. So they're always a source of consolation for me and prevent me from... There's another way I think that people block the sign and the presence, and that is people that worry. I mean, there's a lot to worry about. There's a lot to worry about. Probably like you, I've been fixed to the evening summary of the Olympic Games, and they've been fascinating, but you see it in a couple articles in the paper and so on about how their whole life for these young people, discipline, giving up so much to practice this thing and make this thing happen and hope for the victory, and if they don't have it, there's just utter dejection, and so on and so forth. I think I understand that. I used to play a lot of sports. I enjoyed them. But for the Christian, the victory is already won. The victory is already... Our problem is we don't understand that. We think we're still responsible for the outcome of the whole thing. In one sense we are, in another sense, a much more profound victory has been won. And it should reduce our level of worry. I remember as a child watching television in Cleveland, Ohio. They had TV back then. And I remember there was a show, a children's show, but at the end of it was anybody here from Captain Kangaroo? Hey, great. Do you remember what he said at the end of the show? He used to have a mantra, and it said, do your best and forget about it. And as a child, I said, oh, I like that. Do your best and forget about it. So we've got to avoid worrying. We've got to be too busy, or at least it's good to be busy if you can be centered while you're busy. That's a trick, too, because some of us don't have a choice about not being too busy. These are things that block us. Secondly, what is the gift? What is the gift? Well, it's Jesus. The letter to the Ephesians say it so well. To learn Christ, to be in Christ. And authors talk about linking that. That's both the incarnation, the flesh. Jesus, God so loved the world, he sent his only son, right? So God could be with us, vulnerable. Look what happened to him. But it's also the Eucharist. Vatican II said a very interesting thing about Revelation. He said, Revelation, the Word of God is first the Word, capital W, Jesus. And secondly, the Scriptures are the words about God, inspired, but nonetheless their words are second level removed. If you're in love and you try to write about your beloved, can you ever capture your beloved adequately in words? No. It might help. You might be gifted as a writer. You can point to it. But the actual experience is beyond adequate description. Last Tuesday, this past week, I was in Geneva, Switzerland. And I was visiting downtown Geneva in the old town. And I went into the birthplace of Calvinism, where John Calvin held forth. There's a small chapel, and then the large church, which was once Catholic, but they took over. And you could see prominent right in the middle of the church. This is fairly typical. My father's side of the family is Protestant. My mother's Catholic, so I'm not as, it's not as odd for me. But there's not an altar. There is a huge podium for preaching. And imagine if every time you went to church, you got an hour sermon. Need I say more? Well, I think often Protestants are better at preaching than Catholics are. That's the simple truth. But it's both the Eucharist and the Word. And the Word is Jesus Christ. So, seek the Lord, and you will find. Remember that text? What's even more amazing is the Lord has sought us, and continues to seek us. Let's not worry too much. Let's be careful about being busy. Let's limit the grumbling. And let's welcome the Lord who wants to be with us.